Good morning, Mayor and Council. Rick French, HR and Civil Service Director, and thank you for this opportunity to present a budget offer for your consideration. As public safety is the number one goal and priority of the City Council, I can assure you that public safety is shared by us in HR as one of our very top priorities. Let Lauren catch up here. Go on to the next one. Section 143 of the Texas Local Government Code is a statute that dictates the hiring, promotion, and disciplinary action associated with our sworn police and firefighters. HR facilitates the application process, as well as we administer all police entrance and promotional examinations. As HR Director, I also serve as your Civil Service Director, and it's important to note that public safety is half of the city's overall budget, and over 75% of that amount is for people. The challenges that we currently face are not just a Mesquite issue. There are public safety staffing concerns both locally, statewide, and nationally. And with the incident that happened, the tragic incident that happened a year ago in Dallas, where they lost 5 of their public safety people in the line of duty, makes recruiting ample qualified candidates even that more difficult for us. And losing police and fire employees to retirement, it's just one of those things that all area cities are looking at because of an aging workforce, the physical demands that are required of people in public safety, and the increased scrutiny they're under and the stress that they have to go through. From a historical perspective, from 2007 to 2011, HR had someone that was in charge of strategic recruiting specifically for civil service. And I think Chief Kirby would attest to you that the lady, Jennifer Sweeney, that did that job did it exceedingly well, because she was able to address vacancies with significant impact. And unfortunately, she left to go to another area city as an HR manager, and because of budget constraints, that position was no longer funded when she left at that time back in 2012. Here's what we're specifically looking at. Over the last 3 years, we've had a 36% drop in the number of people who are going online and signing up to say they would like to take our police entrance examinations. Now, in 2014, a bunch of national incidents started to happen that are having an impact on law enforcement recruiting and retention. But we're also having a decrease in the number of people who are sitting for the exam. We've had a 26% drop in the people who actually show up and sit for the examination. And you may say, well, why is that happening? Well, we do surveys from time to time for people who say online they'd like to take the test but then don't show up. Consequently, they tell us, well, we know you're going to give the test again next month, so we'll come next month. It's not a priority to do it today necessarily. They also find out the rigorous background check that they have to go through and drop out. We also have people who say they have the credentials and qualifications, but then when they have to produce them in order to take the test, they can't always come up with that. So those are just some of the reasons that we have them telling us why they don't actually come sit for the exam.
We got a question, Rick.
Yes, sir.
Some of those ideas you just kind of cited don't seem like they would necessarily change from 14 to 16. Is that accounting for the decrease we're seeing? Like the background checks, I assume we've done consistently. The asking them to produce their documentation, I would assume, would be consistent.
Correct, but it's all of those things in combination, I believe, that are attributing to these decreases. Yeah. I think it's a combination thereof.
That makes sense. From our other cities that we compare ourselves against, are we seeing a decrease that's across the board? Is Plano seeing kind of the same slope?
Yes. In fact, I'm going to address that in just a second on another slide, but that's a great point to make that, again, we're not in this alone. Everybody else is seeing the same type of results as we are.
Okay, thanks.
So in addition, the next thing is, for as far as the people passing the examination, Lauren, if you'll change the slide, we actually have, I guess go back one, I apologize, 43%, we have a 43% reduction in the number of people passing the exam. So if you think about it, 36% less people applying to take the test, 20% reduction in people sitting for the exam, and a 43% drop in the number of people passing the exam. It's a pretty negative trend. It's very disturbing. And again, HR, what we do, all of the posting for these jobs, the credentialing and administration of the exam, that's us. However, when we get through there, we turn it over to the investigators in the police department. Once they pass the civil service examination, that very day, our investigators give them a physical agility test. Following that, there's a thorough background check. Everyone has to go through a polygraph test, physical examination, oral boards that consist of members of each rank in the department, psychological exam from an independent psychologist outside the department, and then finally an interview with the chief. All applicants, including the lateral transfer program that you approved last fall, all these candidates are subjected to the same qualification process. As far as the number of vacancies, and Mr. Casper, maybe this will help address this a little bit. As of June 1st, we had 19 openings in the police department. But our sister cities, as of June 1st, just looking across the bottom there, Arlington had 30, Carrollton 5, Dallas 456, Garland 10, etc. What that adds up to, there's 568 openings between 9 cities, and we're all vying for the same applicant pool.
I think that's a really important point. And you may get to this question later on. I don't want to mess up your flow. But if we had 108 applicants pass the exam, what percent of those are we actually hiring? What percent are matriculating through the process, and how does that compare to previous years?
Maybe you're doing so well, you can come do this presentation for me. Approximately 7%, and I'll get to that in just one second. So that's where we are compared to other cities as of June 1st, okay? So ongoing concerns. We checked with TMRS, and based on our current existing employees, 26% of our police officers are eligible to retire today. That's 46 of them. In our fire department, 70 or 35% of our workforce is eligible to retire today. And looking at turnover in the Metroplex, this was a study that was commissioned and conducted by the city of Fort Worth. In the Metroplex, on average in the police department, there's about a 5.64% turnover in that rate. I will tell you, if you look at the city of Dallas, Lord bless them, that's over 20% in the city of Dallas. But we're running about 7.59%, and I find it very interesting. City of Plano and the city of Garland was 7.5% turnover too. So it was the exact amount, the same turnover. And in the Mesquite Police Department, the 2.13 voluntary turnover, well, those were people we lost through the academy that were in field training. It wasn't somebody just resigning. The rest were retirements. And our fire department is the second lowest turnover on the Metroplex study. So our budget offer for you is, despite these challenges, I can assure you there are a number of people that would love to become a public safety officer in the city of Mesquite. But I think we have to do more than just put out there on a job posting, would you like to apply for the test? And we would recommend a specialized civil service recruiting program in HR for your consideration. We've collaborated with both the fire department and the police department, and I think they're in support of this. And we would recommend a full-time HR specialist to coordinate a strategic recruiting program. And on the next slide, these are just some of the major things that I feel like that we could do, because our priority, number one, is to get more and more people qualified for the public safety investigators to look at to possibly offer job offers. But we need to have better promotional materials. We need to make sure our websites with the police department, fire department are congruent with what we're saying in HR, and our website's exactly the same. We need to establish a presence at area job fairs and so forth. I'm not going to read all of these for you, but a couple I will mention is we need to establish better ongoing relationships with area criminal justice departments at UT Arlington, Sam Houston State University, with outplacement services like at Fort Sam or Fort Hood and things like that. and work with MISD through their Explorer program and other things. We can hire age 18-year-olds to work in our as detention officers, possibly bring them on part-time, work with Eastville College, and maybe even have a tuition reimbursement type program to get those people to become career officers working through that. So there's any number of things that we can currently do. So those are just some of the things that we feel like for you can consider.
On that same note, before we move forward, you talked about working with Eastville, but there's also the MISD program. Are they receiving the certifications they need to maybe start off in detention or dispatch as they graduate high school? Can we create a pipeline to where we're getting that filled in that as well?
Exactly. And there are some of those who apply themselves are getting that certification.
I'm just wondering, is there any idea behind giving them like a guaranteed contract? There in the MISD side on our CTE program for teachers, they're signing a contract, and as long as you meet your metrics in 4 years, you come back and you're a certified teacher in MISD. Is there any thought of kind of establishing a comprehensive program?
No, sir, and I'll tell you why. The only reason that we couldn't do something like that in police and fire is because we can't guarantee it unless they can pass the civil service test and the 143 restrictions we have.
Is there any, I don't know how the military kind of bonus points work. Is there any idea of some bonus points for, the students who are going through these programs?
Yes, sir, that is under consideration.
Since you brought that up, it's a really good concept, and I'm not fully aware, but I know that there's kind of an internship program that's working through our MISD and the college levels that we've got going now that are along the same lines, that are getting these guys kind of trained up as 18, 19 when they finish school. The guaranteed thing I like because at least it gives them a leg up. I know I had a young man that was a friend of mine's son that applied as a firefighter side, and he scored very well, but he'd not been in the military. He came out of college, so when the class scoring got done with the military, not that it's a bad thing, he just dropped out of that qualification section. So things like that, but he was a local kid and went to school and all that.
Well, and a lot of these kids are graduating high school with close to the 60 hours they need to start competing for some of these positions.
Right.
And on some of our other goals of kind of diversifying public safety and general employees across the board, the kids that are graduating Mesquite look like the residents of Mesquite. And so you're kind of meeting both those ideas. Rick, on a separate note, it seems like when we give a test for our fire department, we have good applicants showing up.
Yes, sir.
And with police, we're kind of given a monthly test to kind of keep pace there. And obviously, both first responders are equally valued in our community, and both jobs
Absolutely.
are important. But the market seems to be saying that more people want to be firefighters than police. Is there any idea, but with like a signing bonus to get someone in the door, to kind of differentiate and get the market to kind of tilt to the police side, get more people sitting for that test? Because in the school district, I teach social studies. That's kind of my passion. But there's a huge shortage for science teachers. And as silly as I think science is, and there's no jobs or future in science, the school district disagrees, and they give incentives for getting science teachers in the door. So is there any idea or model that you've seen that kind of works?
Well, I've been doing this 20-plus years, and it's always been that when we give a fire test, that you have a really, really large turnout for whatever reason. I have not heard that specific idea, which we could explore. We have recently talked about with our existing police officers and firefighters having some sort of a compensation for them if they bring somebody to us that becomes a police officer or firefighter. We've talked about that a little bit, but that specific idea that you just mentioned, to my knowledge, has not been explored.
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, as we're talking about recruiting, and I'm sure we do some things where we at least are doing some preliminary recruiting with MISD, perhaps, and maybe we're already doing this, but it seems like recruiting also for, and I don't know how often positions come up for dispatch and detention officers, but it seems like us making an effort to even be recruiting for those positions, because we've had a lot of great police officers that came from those ranks, and if a young person can graduate and get in the door with the hope of moving up down the road, we may get not just some good police officers, but some who are loyal to this community as well because of having grown up here. So it's just been on my mind lately.
Well, that's a good point. And, frankly, the communication we have with the school district is great, but in my opinion, it's one of those things that's never enough. We can always do more. So from an outcomes perspective, we, by the end of the next fiscal year, would like to see job offers. This is actual job offers where people go to work for us be increased from that 7% that we talked about earlier to 12%. And that may not seem like a huge amount, but you got to understand the rigorous requirements, the background checks that they go through and everything else. Getting a 5% bump in the number of job offers would be a tremendous increase at this time. Also, we'd like to get our job offers up to 1 out of every 4 from the lateral program that has been instituted, and I think Chief Cato would be the first to tell you that is starting to have some positive impact in our recruiting efforts as well. Also, like to concentrate minority handling to become, that hiring to become much more closely to the demographics of the city, and where it's always our goal. It may be at this point something that seems like it's really out there, but it's always our goal in HR to maintain full staffing in public service in our civil service positions. For the recruiter, TMRS costs, insurance, and so forth, we think total cost to the general fund would be about $65,000 for this particular budget offer. And how would we measure it? Well, again, we would measure and monitor the number of offers that are made for people to become police officers at the city of Mesquite. We'd track the average number of monthly vacancies in civil service and track the quarterly impact of the lateral transfer program. We just really want to provide the focus necessary to keep public safety at the highest level for the community, and we certainly appreciate your consideration of this budget offer. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Casper.
Back on the previous slide, those first 2 bullet points, I was just trying to get some clarification on how you measure that. Obviously, we don't want to lower the qualification of any employees we bring in, but what does that look like? If we're increasing more job offers without lowering qualification standard, how are you measuring that specific idea?
The number of people who pass the test is the bottom number, and we divide it by the number of people that the police department send us over paperwork that they're offering jobs to.
Sure, I'm sorry, I should be more clear. How are you measuring their qualification degree? Is it the psych test that's weeding them out, and we're not going to take any, I don't know how that measurement works, but the second part of that bullet point, without lowering qualification standards, how are you going to determine whether by increasing from 7 to 12%, it's not bringing less qualified candidates in?
And Chief Cato is here to answer that part of it.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Casper. Yes, the number one thing that people fail after they pass the civil service exam is the board. We lose more people in the interview board, and we have changed. I have instituted a change, the director has changed how the board is comprised and how it's executed, how it's scored, because the board was you get a 1 to 5 score, 3.0, you had to average between 3 people. So we were failing people with 2.99, 2.98. So what makes a 2.99 person any less qualified than a 3.0? I mean, 1/100th of a point. You're deciding somebody's potential career for a lifetime over that fraction of a point. And I didn't think that was fair. But that was the rule, 3.0, if you didn't get it. And so we're actually doing a pass-fail. So 2 people have to pass, the 3 have to pass you on the board, and that is getting a few more people. I don't consider that lowering the standard, but if you have 2 people who say this person qualifies and passes, and you have one, for whatever reason, gives them such a low score that they get a 2.96, I saw a bunch of those 2.9s, and I just didn't think we were doing ourselves and the citizens of Mesquite a service, investing all this money to get somebody to that point, and then washing them out for 1/100th of a point. I just didn't believe that that's the right thing to do, and so we changed it. And so we changed it just a few months ago, so we're starting to see more people make it past that. The next thing they fail at, or is they voluntarily withdraw at the polygraph, Because as we go over their background, one of the final things we ask them is there anything you haven't told us before we give you this test that and then they'll confess things, and then they'll say, well, maybe it's not in your interest to continue in the process, and they withdraw, so they're not a termination. So those are the two biggest things. And I'm not going to change the polygraph thing because you either tell us the truth or you don't. We're not looking for perfection. If they were looking for perfection, they wouldn't have hired me in 1988. You wouldn't have hired me last year. Mr. Healy wouldn't have hired me last year. And you wouldn't have proved that if you were looking for perfection. What I'm looking for is for people who are honest, who tell the truth, who work hard, and who are willing to, if they mess up, to stand up and say they messed up and fix it. That's what we're looking for. And so but I think the board was a huge stumbling block for people. And that's one of the things that we've changed to try to get past that.
No, I think that board anecdote's a good background to understand. On that second bullet point, the lateral transfer program, how big of a field are we receiving? What is the current percentage? What's weeding them out? Could you kind of talk through that?
Currently, we have 46 people been given the test every month. HR's been a tremendous support of getting us. We have people from the May, the June, and July tests. We have 46 candidates currently in the process that have passed the test. 10 of those are lateral transfer folks. We have failed some applicants from other departments, people that are current police officers who we caught them lying to us in their background. And so if they're lying to us, we don't want them. So out of that 10, realistically, every single one is not going to make it. But we think we'll probably get, 6 or 7 out of that 10. We'll get more than half. There's a much higher percentage out of that group that we get that will qualify. And some, once we make them an offer, the circumstance changed. One young man we made an offer to, he just found out then his wife was expecting, and he didn't want to change insurances. She liked her doctor, and the whole, he made a decision based on what was best for his family versus, and her medical care versus taking the job here. That was more important to him than changing jobs. So we do get a much higher percentage of the lateral. So I agree, we do want to get more. We have 7 on the department now, laterals. We just started academy class last week with 7 in the academy and 2 laterals. They're going into my presentation later on, but right now that's a tidbit from there. We just started last week with 9 to help close that gap, and 2 of those are laterals from Dallas. So
I appreciate that, and I don't mean to get too much into your presentation. I did kind of want to get some more details just as we're assessing this budget cost of how much of the recruitment would be solved by recruiter versus salary benefits increase, and that kind of conversation. So I think your anecdotes are timely, so I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Did you have something for the chief? Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Okay. I understand the inability to, create preferred spots for MISD students with regard to police and fire. But I'm curious if there was a way to structure a program with MISD that has some dual credit component to it and continued enrollment in these fields in a criminal justice program and give specific slots to the dispatchers and jailers.
Yes, sir. One of the things to that point that we've done, we've taken basically 2 of our full-time detention positions and we're making part-time positions. We just enrolled our first. He's a college student, grew up in the city, graduated from Mesquite ISD, and he's working for us now as a part-time detention officer. And he's going to go back to school in the fall. And he's even he'll come up on the weekend, some weekends, 1 weekend a month, because he doesn't have school on Friday. He's going to work Friday and Saturday nights. He's going to stay connected to the organization. That's the first one. We're looking to do that more. We have hired a couple of kids right out of high school who graduate. They pass the background. They work in the jail, and they're going to school. So as far as dual credit, I don't have anything like that, but we are concentrating our efforts in recruiting local kids to get them opportunities, even creating for the first time with HR's help this part-time detention officer position so that they can work 20 hours a week at $16 an hour. It's like working 40 hours a week for minimum wage. You work less hours, you can still go to school, study, meet your obligations academically, and you get experience, and we learn your work ethic. Hopefully you keep your nose clean, and you have something to look forward to whenever you finish your studies.
On the outside of the jail is probably a pretty good way to spend your confidence, right? I guess the other thing I'd like to see us look at is from a dispatch standpoint, and see if we could create a CTD program with Mesquite ISD for jailers and dispatchers, because we're not the only city needing them, but not only would it help us fill our needs, but I think it would help us prepare students and give us yet another relationship with the district to prepare our kids for a bright future outside of college education.
Yes, sir.
I should say a full college education.
Yes, sir. In my discussions with MISD administration has been that when they develop new technology programs, maybe setting up a dispatch station so that we can get kids trained and things like that. What to expect when they come in, if they apply to a dispatch center, to help better prepare them for their career, because it's more than just typing on a computer or talking. You have to do multiple tasks at one time. It's a very highly skilled position that not just anyone can do, but you can do if you have some training and preparation.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it, Rick, too.
Yes, thank you. Did you have something for the chief while he's up here?
Well, both of y'all are up here, and this is a more generalized question, so I appreciate it. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for drilling down in those details. I mean, I'm fascinated by the whole recruitment issue. And we were talking about generalized recruitment percentages or failure to recruit in across the board in North Texas. And I guess I'm looking also longer term, because of the eligibility of retirement. Are there communities, are there areas in Texas that are avoiding this issue or doing significantly better? Are there any programs or items that are unique to those communities? Basically, is anybody out there doing something differently, more unique, that isn't part of this, that maybe we should at least start examining to address this longer? What I look at as sort of a balloon retirement concern. If we've got 75 officers eligible for retirement, I'm thinking 18, 19, and 20. Are there some unique programs that some communities are doing that maybe we ought to start looking at?
Well, there's 23 officers with 20 or more years and 23 with 25 or more years. So there's 46 eligible to retire. In perspective, Mesquite Police Department doubled in size from 1983. There were 60 people to 1990. It went from 60 to 120 in that 7-year period. So we still haven't doubled from 1990 to 2017. In 27 years, we haven't experienced that much growth. We're at 234 authorized positions. It'd be 240 to double. So we're dealing with a very unique bubble, a snake that swallowed something. There's this big chunk right there in the middle. In the region, I haven't seen anything. I met the Baltimore police commissioner from Baltimore, Maryland, and one of the things the city of Baltimore was doing to address two things: their inner city blight. Their row houses, they have rows, and they have those row houses, and they have them in various states of disrepair. They were offering an incentive to officers to purchase one of those houses for like $1, and you had 3 years that you had to repair it and get it livable, and then you could stay. You had to keep it for 5 years, but you had 3 years to get it up to code, and after 5 years they could then sell it. That's just one thing. Not in Texas. That's in Baltimore, Maryland.
But that would bring, and not trying to interrupt. So follow up. That sounds like one thing where it's bringing officers to live in the community. Number one, and number two, a significant financial incentive. If you're getting a $150,000 house, and as part of your compensation, you're getting that. It's almost like a homesteading issue where, you live here, you improve it, you're paying taxes, you're in your community, and that's added a financial incentive to come and work. So, I love that idea as a concept to examine further. Did Baltimore PD, did they say that was something that drew police officers to apply and then stay working there?
It didn't draw people to apply. It helped keep people living in the city is what it did. That's what it was designed for. Not unlike any other community where officers work. You don't want to go to the movies and see somebody that you arrested. You don't want to go to the grocery store and see somebody that you arrested. So over time, officers tend to move out of the communities where they serve. That's just the way it is. Not unlike here. Of our 222 officers on staff right now, I believe 30 people live in the city, including myself. So that's what Baltimore did, to do the two things, to lift up those neighborhoods that have been abandoned and to get officers, encourage officers to live there. Now, HUD has a national program called the Heroes Next Door program, where any officer in designated communities, not just Mesquite, but all over North Texas, but it's a federal run program, that you can purchase selected houses for half the price, and you have to live in those for 3 years before you can sell them. And firefighters have the same thing. Teachers and nurses, I believe, now are included in that. But so there are other programs out there that we don't have to bear the full cost of that. I don't know how they designate those homes for the Hero Next Door program, but if there's a way we could do that, they bear the cost of it, and we get the benefit of it. But.
Right. And so do you feel, and I know what you're saying, do you feel like that might help in recruitment? If we had a program like that, would that help in recruitment or just in retaining officers living in the town?
I think that's more for retaining officers living in the town. For recruitment, to be quite honest, sir, the national narrative of how police officers are looked at now and treated in the criminal justice system is what's driving people away from the profession, to be quite honest. The war on cops. That's what it is. If a doctor makes a mistake, it's a mistake and it's malpractice insurance. If a paramedic makes a mistake, it's a malpractice thing and they sue the city. If an officer makes a mistake and somebody dies, they want to put him in prison. That's the reality we're facing right now. You can't make a mistake in our profession without being considered a killer, and even if it's a God's honest, straight up just mistake, they want to put you in prison for it. And so that's what we're up against, to be quite honest. I mean, I won't stand here and lie to you. That's what we're.
But yeah, and that's why I'm asking the questions to see. I mean, as a council, I think there are things we can affect and control, and there are things that we may not be able to affect and control. I can't affect and control the national mood, incidents that happen around the country, but if there are things that we can specifically do in this community for recruitment, if there are programs that we can enact to attract police officers to work here, if you've run across, just like you're saying in the Baltimore, and I love that idea and I'd like to explore it further, and the availability of it, but if there are other incentives that we can get for our police and fire, first responders, to increase recruitment of qualified candidates and retention of officers to continue to work here, I'm open to those, and I'd love to hear more of if there are more unique issues and items to do those.
There are two. One of the things we're working on now, I've worked with Rick, and I've sent it to our attorney to review, it is eliminating the college requirement for somebody that has 3 years of military experience. Because they graduate high school, they go right in the military, they've been on active duty for 3 years. They can come back, they get the GI Bill, they're going to go to school, but they need a job right then, that we can eliminate the college requirement. That will cause a change to 143 to the civil service rule, and we can do that through the Civil Service Commission, and that's one thing we're going to do. Another thing that we're looking at doing is to be more competitive with our peer cities is pay for any other bachelor's degree. Right now you only get the $120 credit education incentive pay for a criminal justice or related field, sociology, psychology, something like that. To me, there's value if you have a history degree, you have a political science degree, a business degree, and that you get paid for that up front. And so that's something we're working on that also. We can do that currently at 5 years when you get your advanced T-code license through the state, and you have to have a degree, and with that degree you get paid for it. But between the first year and the second year and that fifth year, there's 3 years there that they're not really cashing in on their education, their investment in their education. We close that gap. I think that makes us more competitive with our peer cities. All the other cities that I'm aware of, Grand Prairie, Irving, Dallas, Fort Worth, Plano, they pay for a degree, regardless if it's a bachelor's degree in criminal justice or not.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I know we got part of your presentation already, but we appreciate you coming up and answering those things. Jeff, do you have something else for you?
Rick, do you have any knowledge of other cities that maybe pay or have a step increase as police officers in particular earn their masters, or I forget the different classifications as peace officers. There's kind of different benchmarks you can earn throughout your career. Do those come with significant pay increases as you accomplish those?
Incentive programs like that do exist, but typically they're like $100 or so. I mean, a month. I mean, that's substantial to me, $100, but it's relative. It certainly is. And the things that Chief Cato just said, in HR, we fully support all of those type things. And if I may answer a comment that you made just a second ago, the reason that we're coming to you asking you to consider this particular budget offer is this. I don't want to take anybody sworn out of police or fire doing a lot of these things that you're asking to have done. If we have one person that's giving a consistent message to MISD or coming up with all of these different things, and we're keeping people on the streets and fighting fires and doing that sort of stuff, if we have the right individual, history has told us through that 4-year period, you will have an impact on the recruiting of this. And so consequently, I will be honest with you, if Chief Cato came and talked to me as a potential recruit, I would be very honored to speak to someone, he or Chief Kirby. But the fact is, in the school district and so forth, where they have career days and job fairs and stuff like that, as long as we're having and presenting a consistent message to those folks and giving them each of the advantages and attributes of going to work for the city of Mesquite, whether it be a firefighter, whether it be a dispatcher, whether it be a detention officer, or whatever, this person, if we hire the right person, will have a very positive impact.
So we don't really have significant pay increases as they earn higher distinctions for the police officers. On the firefighting side, I remember maybe a couple budget conversations ago, there was a conversation about patches, and that kind of piqued my interest because I really wasn't sure what we were talking about. But do those come with significant increases as they earn some professional distinctions?
No, sir.
Okay.
Currently, they do not.
Okay. It just seems like there might be a model for retention, because after 5 years, correct me if I'm wrong, they're kind of capped out, right? The step increases after year 5 were leveled off.
Right.
But
So-
there is professional development that goes on.
Yeah.
I mean, they go through extensive and
Sure.
significant training
Right.
that is analyzed and assessed and could be numerically based, and there might be incentive programs tied onto that.
Master peace officer, et cetera, et cetera. Sure, you can. And in other cities, the other thing is, once that you get into the ranks, such as sergeant, lieutenant, et cetera, they do have one step in a lot of other cities where the entry-level pay, when you pass the civil service exam and get the promotion, you move up to that pay grade at that particular time, but a lot of them also have one step after they move into the ranks, which we don't have.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any more green lights. Do you have anything else that you have today?
I got 2 more presentations. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
You want to pass out the next handout, guys?
We're ready. That was my teeing it up, Rick, so we could move on. That's exactly what I was doing.
I'll give you one of these
Yes,
to
sir.
counter
I know we're the minority.
counterattack that.
I know. You're the minority. I get it.
Well, right on the heels of the budget offer, I wanted to speak to you. HR approached the leadership team this year about civil service pay, and would like for you to consider a recommendation that we're bringing forth in that respect. Our civil service compensation is measured against 7 benchmark cities. And they're the same cities that you saw in Ms. Mall's presentation: Arlington, Carrollton, Garland, Grand Prairie, Irving, Plano, and Richardson. And from a beginning standpoint for a new firefighter police officer, it's the same beginning pay. But our beginning firefighter and police officers are measured against the midpoints of our benchmark cities, whereas all other ranks are measured against the maximum in those particular ranges. And with the difficulty in recruiting civil service and the budget offer that I just completed with you, I'd like to consider an additional 0.5% to that 2% that's in the baseline. Now, obviously, personally, I'd like to be a lot more than 0.5% for our public safety folks. And starting with the police, the 2% is already in the baseline budget, but adding an extra 0.5%, if it was implemented January 1st, would be about $63,000. Now, Ted Chin at the University of Texas, when you take marketing, they teach you these concepts that work. Not resigning and leaving a conference or whatever, But in marketing, one of the things, if you're selling something, $4,999 sounds better than $5,000. But if you're trying to recruit new police officers and firefighters, if we do this 0.5%, it'll get us to $5,000 a month. And $5,000 a month sounds better than $4,887. So this is a real big thing to me when we're going out recruiting. But all new police officers that we hire or firefighters would start at a minimum of $5,000 a month if you should choose to increase this extra 0.5%. Now, looking at the current pay rankings for our police, you'll remember that police officer is compared to the mid in the other cities, and all other ranks are at the max rate of pay for those ranks. Currently, we rank anywhere from 5th to 8th in these categories in the cities that we benchmark against. And long before I was privileged to go to work here, that was made a decision to compare to midpoint on beginning officers and firefighters, whereas the other ranks at maximum, that was decided before I came. But if we do a 2.5% increase, Lauren, if you'll change that slide.
Can we just pause? Can you go
Absolutely.
back for a second? I'm not really following the rationale behind that. I know you said that's kind of the way we've always done it, but what does that mean? Why?
Why is it done that way?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know why we did it. In the next slide, if you'll just bear with me one second. If we go
ahead, the next slide makes perfect sense. There's 3 kind of summary boxes to the far right on each one. I'd be curious to see those 3 summary boxes for our current status too.
It is. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's only with the 2.5% raise, right?
No, what I'm saying is kind of the title of that last column to the far right in each one.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of feels like we're doing apples to oranges when it's convenient. It's mid-rank, max, and then when you go to the next slide, we're going to have minimum, mid, max, and it's much easier to follow because we kind of have that all detailed out. And I was just curious what the significance is of kind of picking, and I know you said we've just kind of always done it that way, but it's just not clicking with me on why that's the case.
All I know is that the reason it was compared to midpoint on beginning police officers and firefighters, that's where we wanted to compare our rate of pay at that particular point in the salary range against the cities we benchmark against. And with ranking officers, those who've been with us 5 years or more, where we compare it in rank and compensation against their max.
Okay. And on the next slide, when we go to the pay increase, really we're ranking our pay increase to their current year. We don't really know what they're going to do in the budget. And
I'm telling you, you should be doing this. I mean, you got this.
No, you're doing a good job, and I don't mean to be
we're doing a good job.
but that's, I think, going to be a challenge. We don't know what these other communities are going to do, and we don't know if it's really going to keep us anywhere near, 1 or 2. And I'll be honest, and it could just be the way the data is laid out on that previous slide. It kind of seems like with our police officer, we're 8, and then as you matriculate up the process, it doesn't seem to be quite as harsh. There's some 6s and some 5s and some 7s, and I would be much more comfortable if the inverse was true.
Right.
And I know there's a much greater number of our base patrol officers, but yeah, this data is tough to follow, and maybe we can get a different handout at a later date that has kind of that minimum, middle, max ranking for the current pay too, just so we can kind of do apple comparison.
Sure, we can do that.
Thanks.
And also, Rick, as we go along this summer, I think for those that are willing to share with us, we can get some of what at least the other cities are thinking about.
Right.
I mean, they have public meetings just like we do, and we can kind of get that feel for where it's headed, and that would help as well.
I think the recruiter conversation is important, but I really think this piece of the puzzle is equally, if not more so.
So, again, with a 2.5% increase to police, and I'll show it to you for fire in just a second, this just shows you, again, not knowing what other cities are going to do, where it would put us ranking-wise, but looking across from beginning pay to the midpoint of the range to the maximum of the range. So it shows in this particular instance where we're 5 to 8 on the first slide in the range, at least temporarily it would make us 2 to 8 in some of the ranges. So it does improve our positioning, at least based on July 21st and what we know today. So in the fire department, the cost of doing this would be $57,486 if we implemented it January 1st. Again, looking at the slides of where we rank in this particular instance with the fire department, we're currently 2 to 7, as high as number 2 in one instance to number 6. Again, not knowing what other cities would do. If we gave a 2.5% raise, Lauren, on the next slide, it would take us from 2 to 7 to 2 to 6 in the rankings. So, again, I think it's important to look at all three ranges, whether we use it as a measuring point or not. If we want to stay with midpoint on beginning officers and firefighters and for all other ranks the maximum, that's fine, but I think it's good to look at where we are from a starting pay standpoint as well. And so as a total for your consideration, to give that extra 0.5% would be about $127,000. So I'll be glad to answer questions about this.
Questions about, I know you got one more thing too, but any questions on this particular presentation here? Ready for number 3, I guess.
Okay. Last, our group health fund. Go ahead and go to the first slide. So, some positive news for a change. Our group health fund through May, some of these numbers you've already seen Ms. Mull presented as part of the quarterly update that she does each quarter, but through May, we're about $750,000 under budget on our health claims, about $130,000 under budget on our pharmacy claim. Our fixed expenses are about $18,000 under budget. Our fixed expenses, give you an idea of what those are. That's what we pay Blue Cross Blue Shield each month for their administration fees. It's what we pay for stop-loss premiums on our excess coverages. It's what we pay Compass, the company that does business with us, to find the best medical care at the best price. It's what we pay for the Medicare supplement for our retirees age 65 and older, et cetera. And the number Ms. Mull came up with and we agree with, we're looking at about $450,000, the under budgeted loss of $850,000 at the year end. There's one asterisk that you see on here. One of the reasons that we think by year end that the pharmacy budget will be about $200,000 over budget is because each month our accounting department does a true up with the school district. Through the Mesquite Employee Health Clinic, the drugs that are purchased for the pharmacy over there, they do it through Cardinal Health. That's a new provider that they have over there. But even with Cardinal Health and the new agreement that Mesquite Independent School District has with the clinic and with Cardinal, it's still more than what Blue Cross Blue Shield can buy those drugs for. So when pharmacies' prescriptions are filled at the MEHC and Blue Cross Blue Shield reimburses less than what the drugs actually cost the clinic, we have to do a true-up at the end of each month to make up that delta between what the school district through Cardinal paid for and what Blue Cross pays for it. So that's what that amount is. On the next slide, on the health plan revenue, it's about $450,000 shortfall, we believe, by the end of the year. Again, this is a figure Ms. Mull provided you at her last update. And there's a very good reason for the decrease in the revenue, and that is our HSA option has lower premiums than the previous PPO and EPO that we previously had. 3 years ago when I spoke to you, we had about 20% participation in the HSA. as of yesterday, we have 84% of our employees are now on the HSA program. So it has a lower payroll deduction each month. Our retirees were moved to a high deductible health plan. 100% of our retirees under age 65 are on that, and that also has a lower premium than the PPO. So those are the reasons why the revenue has gone down. It's just that the people are enrolling in plans that have a lower payroll deduction or premium. To look at those premiums, here's what they currently are per paycheck for the HSA and EPO for our employees, as well as the surcharges for tobacco use, or the surcharge for employees whose spouse is on our coverage because they've turned down coverage that was offered through their place of employment, and the contributions the city makes towards the HSA. You will note that on those payroll deductions for employees, we're the most competitive on payroll deductions of all the other sister cities in the Metroplex of what we charge our employees through payroll deduction for health insurance. And we're real proud of that. And there's no recommended increase in this budget year for that. You will note, however, on our contributions, or what I refer to as seed money to the HSA, there is a small decrease in the amount that the city puts into the HSA. And the reason that that is being recommended, if you'll look at the next slide, we're actually this year going to recommend a decrease in the calendar year deductible from the current $5,750 to $5,000, and the out-of-pocket from $5,750 to $5,000, and 2 times that amount for families. The reason we can do that and recommend that is because over 95% of our employees will be on the HSA next year, which has a lot less liability to the city. And the reason for do that, in order to be IRS and ACA compliant, if you or a member of your family are age 65 or will be age 65 in calendar year 2018, or you or one of your covered dependents are covered by Social Security benefits such as Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth, you cannot be on an HSA. The reason being, if you have Part A of Medicare, that provides hospital benefits, and you can't have an HSA if you're going to have that coverage until the deductible's met. That's all the big piece of the HSA. Until that deductible's met, you can't have those other benefits or a contribution into that amount. So consequently, to be compliant, only folks will be on our EPO program who are age 64, 65 next year, or have a Social Security benefit. But there are no other changes other than the recommended reduction in the benefits for it or the EPO. On the next slide, the EPO, you can see that it will be limited to employees turning age 65 in 2018, or they have one of those Social Security benefits that I've mentioned. And again, there's absolutely no change in the high deductible health plan for retirees or the Medicare supplement that they have, which is that slide right there. Okay? So our projection for this year, we believe actually our medical expense costs will remain flat, even with the inflation in medical care, health care costs, and so forth, because of 95-96% of our employees being on the HSA. We think that we can maintain a flat dollar amount there. We do believe our pharmacy costs will continue to go up, and mainly, again, it's because of that true-up. We want to do, our insurance committee at the city has asked us to do a full analysis and evaluation of the MEHC. This is the 10-year anniversary of our partnership with MISD on this clinic, and they want us to see, look at everything from the pharmacy to city employees getting appointments more easily and stuff like that. So we plan on doing that as well. We're going to evaluate to see if there's any voluntary, no city cost to gap coverage to help some of the folks with deductibles and things like that that might make sense if they want to pay for it themselves. We believe our total expenses, believe it or not, we believe will break even. But because, again, instead of a $450,000 shortfall in revenue, we believe it would be closer to $600,000 this year because of so many people being on the HSA with lower deductions. Be glad to answer any questions.
Rick, regarding the clinic and the pharmacy, how do we split up the costs with MISD? Do they pay for their use and we pay for our use, or is it just a 50-50 contribution? In other words, if they're using much more than we are they paying more for that? How does that work?
The short answer, it's about 70-30. It's based on the number of employees at the school district versus the number of full-time
Okay.
employees that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. French about the insurance, health?
I don't have a question,
Oh.
but I do have a comment.
Okay.
And just a thought, I know that the insurance committee asked that we, or the benefits committee asked that we look at the partnership itself. What I'd like to see as part of that analysis is, whether from a strategic standpoint, there's the ability for both organizations to partner with Texas Health or somebody like that. As you see some of these urgent care centers that seem to be struggling, and seeing if there's a way in which you can partner with them to save money for the taxpayers, because it appears as though we've kind of gotten ourselves into the healthcare business, and I'm not sure that we're the most efficient at running the healthcare business. And from the sounds of the pharmacy issue, it looks like that might be the case. So.
Yeah, it's good thoughts. I think you're having to look at that. I mean, when it was enacted, and I didn't realize it was 10 years ago, there were substantial savings to both the district and the city, and that may have run its course. And I think that you're exactly right. We need to evaluate other options to see if we're still getting the savings, which is ultimately what we're trying to do is eliminate the costs for our employees, but also for the city. So I think that's a good comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything else? We're about ready to break for lunch, a little early if that's all right. So, okay. So you take care of that.
Lunch is downstairs in the council conference room and the kitchen area, so we'll go down there and then
12:45.
be back up here about 12:45.
12:45. We will reconvene. Thank you.